Okay, your church has a bunch of groups, it's got classes, it's got Bible studies, and your people aren't in any of them. Or maybe they're in way too many. Let's talk about streamlining your discipleship ministries today on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and A.J. Mathieu.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, A.J. Mathieu.
Woo!
All right.
Right on.
Man, so a couple of things before we get into this. I think this is going to be a very helpful episode because I don't know that I've walked into very many churches where this wasn't a problem, where we've got a lot of stuff happening, but communication isn't super clear. Some people are involved in too much. Some people aren't involved in anything. So I think we're going to help people get some clarity today on how to do that differently, or how to approach that issue, topic, problem. But before we dive into that, a couple of things I want to announce. We just announced last week a new partnership with Build Groups with our friend Adam Ehrlichman and his team at Build Groups. We have a new Masterclass on the 6 areas of groups ministry. And man, if you follow the instruction in that course, you may be able to grow your groups ministry by 30 to 50% in 6 to 12 months. They have example after example of churches that they have worked with and partnered with, and the amount of material and information and tools they have included in this masterclass is pretty unbelievable in my mind. I was as I was putting all this together inside of the Healthy Churches Toolkit, I was like, wow, this is a lot of value. So to take advantage of this, go to healthychurchestoolkit.com, sign up for a 7-day free trial. You'll get full access to the masterclass. You'll be able to start accessing that content. And number 2, connected to that, we have a workshop with Adam coming up this Thursday as this is being released. So that would be tomorrow. As this is being released, it will be tomorrow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that is happening at, remind me the time, I think it's 11 a.m. Eastern is when the workshop is happening live. If you attend live, you can ask questions. You could ask Adam some questions. And
May 2025.
Yeah. Adam's going to be co-leading that workshop with us, and we're going to be diving deeper. I believe we're going to be focusing on that first. There's six areas of groups ministry, and I think we're going to dive a little bit deeper in the first area of groups ministry, which is discover. So how to increase the number of leaders that you have, the number of group leaders, whether that's Sunday school classes or small groups, doesn't matter, but the number of leaders and teachers that you have available. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that in the workshop. So, but that's only available to people who are in the toolkit. And if you're like, I don't want to pay for the toolkit right now, or I'm not sure, again, sign up for 7 days for free. And if you happen to be listening to this after the workshop has already happened, you'll still go and sign up for a 7-day free trial, and you can go back and watch the replay. That's a lot of words I just said. Did I miss anything?
All they need to know is great new class in the toolkit. Go to healthychurchestoolkit.com now. Start your 7-day free trial, and you'll be glad you did. If you're outside of North America, go to healthychurchesglobal.com and get your free access subscription to the toolkit there.
Yeah.
Okay.
One last thing I want to mention before we get started in the content for today. This is the only place, at least for now, this is the only place that you can access this masterclass. So even if you go to Build Groups, this doesn't live somewhere on their website. At least that could, maybe someday that will change in the future. But for right now, this is an exclusive partnership. So this is the only place where you can watch this masterclass. Can't get it on Ministry Pass. You can't get it from somewhere else. You can't watch it on YouTube. It's only inside the Healthy Churches Toolkit. So sign up healthychurchestoolkit.com or healthychurchesglobal.com if you live outside of North America.
Great response to it already. So we're excited to have it. Okay, let's talk about streamlining discipleship ministries in your church, such as groups, right? Well, that's kind of why we're talking about this. We're groups heavy with the toolkit this month, but we are always heavy on intentional and streamlined discipleship in churches every day at the Malphurs Group and Healthy Churches Global. This is a key area, one of the most significant areas that we work in throughout our strategic envisioning process that we do with churches, is focusing on how are we going to organize ministries in our church to most efficiently and effectively disciple people into becoming disciple makers. And so that requires, as I just said, intentionality in it. We want to make sure that our ministries are achieving that goal, that we're not just doing things because it was trendy or because it seemed like a good idea and then just kind of leaving things to hopefully have good outcomes and never really know. We want things super intentional that we're able to monitor and see, is this really working well? And that people are super clear about what's the best thing? How should I use my time here at church? So, Scott, we've got 3 points. So let's start off in our first area here.
Let me pull back for one second and just say, because I think you said this really well, sort of in the teaser for this episode. But this is the problem that we're trying to solve today. You have, let's say you've got 18 different groups that meet, women's groups, men's groups, Bible study groups. You've got 6 different Sunday school classes that happen, and then you have these random smattering of other kinds of affinity groups or whatever that meet throughout the week or once a month. They're all on different curriculum. They are all on different meeting time schedules. They're all on different frequency of meetings. They're all on different start and stop times, like some run all year, some run only during, they don't meet at all during the summer or whatever. And as a result, some people are engaged in a lot of these things, and some people aren't engaged in any of them at all. And so the problem is that you have varying levels of engagement. And from your perspective as the pastor, you think, well, we're offering a lot of stuff. How can we see such different results? Some people way almost too involved because they're getting stuck there and they're not taking any other step. And other people who they only come on Sunday morning and they're not engaged. And so the point of this episode is to give you 3 actions that you can take to solve this problem. How can we streamline the things we're doing? We're in particular talking about adult discipleship ministries. You had mentioned a second ago, sort of a holistic. We can take the same logic and apply it across all of our ministries, but we want to drill down and specifically talk about adult discipleship ministries today, using that as a broad category to cover Bible studies, small groups, Sunday school, etc.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So first, the first thing that we want to talk about is this shift in function and in mindset from being program-oriented to being process-oriented. And what we mean by that, the program mindset is what most churches really find themselves in, and that is we have something for everyone. Or maybe we're trying to have something for everyone. There's churches that they aspire to just have more so that perhaps nobody can get left behind because we have found every niche possible. And they just keep adding and adding and adding, as opposed to a process-oriented mindset in which we say, we have a pathway for everyone. And we're able to move people through, in the way we teach and work through this, a relatively short amount of things or small number of things that we ask people to engage in. And it provides a much greater framework for decision-making, for monitoring the health of ministries, for monitoring the output success of ministries. And what we mean by that is, can we actually see that people are maturing in the faith? Are they becoming more like Jesus? Are their behaviors changing? Is there life transformation happening? And not just, monitoring a spreadsheet of attendance numbers across 15 or 50 different things that happen at the church every week or every month. And so this is the first primary point here in streamlining ministries, discipleship ministries into greater effectiveness and efficiency, is developing a pathway that we can clearly organize things in the church.
Yeah. So the key here is that we want to emphasize clarity over variety. So a lot of churches get stuck because they think we need to have something for everyone. Everyone needs to feel like I have a group. And we've talked about this before on the podcast, but not for a while. But this trap that churches get stuck in where no matter how much you subdivide, you can always subdivide more. We have something for women, but do we have something for single women? Well, we have but some moms are working moms and some moms are stay-at-home moms, and the times for them would be better or different. We need something for men. We need something for men. What about men who are retired, men who are working? What about people who, the more that you the more affinities you look for, the more affinities you'll find. And when you start chasing that route, you don't win. And what happens is people start to not understand where it is that you want for me to connect. And some people will just say, well, this is just Simple Church. I've read that book. But that's not quite right. And I'm not criticizing Simple Church. But the point isn't, well, just do fewer things. That isn't even the point either. It's about speaking clearly about what we are doing so that people know what their next best step is. How should I engage? How do you want for me to engage? So even if we do have a variety of meeting times or options or places, we're not communicating in a way that makes it look like a buffet, and instead they are there's slots of options for me to engage with that fit within a framework of a clear discipleship pathway. Hopefully this will make more and more sense as we kind of move through the points, but the first key point that we're trying to make here is we need to shift our thinking from program-oriented thinking, we need to have something for everyone, to process-oriented thinking. We need to have a pathway that moves people forward in discipleship that includes everyone. So that's the first key point. And then I think hopefully this will make more sense as we move through.
Yeah. Let's just keep going. So our second point is combining ministries into a primary pathway. So, that's already what does that mean? We speak of having 3 to 5 steps in a discipleship pathway in the church. And there's order and significance to what these steps would accomplish. And generally speaking, there's a gathering. There's like your Sunday worship service. There's a large group gathering. There's a step for growth, increasing in maturity, and fellowshipping with believers. We would call this a growth step. There's a service step in which we're intentionally engaging people in the work of the ministry in the church, introducing them to concepts that they may not even be familiar with, in spiritual gifts and temperament, personality types, to help them find how God has created them for work in his kingdom. And outreach, getting outside of the church to bring the gospel to people and to meet the needs in the local area and around the world. And so we've got an order to this in engaging with other believers as the body of Christ, supporting one another, supporting the church, living out our faith in the world. And of course, also starting with giving praise and worship to God. But we have to then be able to start to put some words or names to these functions within the framework of the pathway. And so we have to have a primary thing in each of these spaces or steps along the pathway. We have to be able to direct people to something concrete that we can say, here's what we've developed at our church. This is going to be the greatest use of your time to engage in these things. We call those primary ministries. And we work through a series of tools when we're working with the church and that are described in the Strategic Envisioning Training course on the Healthy Church Toolkit to be able to develop these and to organize them. Again, as Scott just said, clarity is what we're going for. We want to be able to communicate in a very simple way a few simple things for people to engage in. So the development of primary ministries within the pathway is key to that.
Yeah. So imagine I asked you to sort of describe for me what a disciple is or what a disciple looks like. What does a mature Christian look like? You probably wouldn't start with describing the things which he or she attends. You maybe wouldn't begin by saying, oh, a disciple is someone who they're at church every Sunday. And they also attend, a mature disciple is someone who attends a men's Bible study at 6 a.m. on Thursdays. Those might be programs that they attend, but that's not the image of what a disciple is, if I just asked you in the abstract, I said, describe to me what a disciple looks like, you'd probably say, a disciple is someone who worships the Lord with their whole life. They have a really active prayer life. They're sharing their faith outside the walls of the church. They're studying God's word, and they have deep spiritual friendships. That's probably what that would look like. So then I would have to turn to you and say, well, how are we cultivating that kind of behavior or that kind of maturity inside of a person at your church? What is it that we're doing that helps to bring about that level of maturity in each person?
Mm-hmm.
Now we have a framework for thinking about what a program is. And the problem is that we often don't start there. We go, okay, we're a church, we need to have things that we do. Rather than go, we're a church, we have people we're trying to develop into something. And so that was the first shift that we're trying to talk about. So then when we talk about a primary ministry, we go, okay, a primary ministry is merely the primary or environment where we're trying to develop some aspect of discipleship. So as AJ talked about, we have these different steps in a discipleship pathway, and in each step, we're trying to cultivate some different element of mature discipleship. And we don't want anyone to get stuck in any one of these steps because we want them to grow to a deeper level of maturity. And when it comes to discipleship ministries, this is often where we're talking about some sort of edification or Christian maturity, or what we often just call generally discipleship, although we would argue discipleship's a bigger vantage point than just this. But we're trying to cultivate community and fellowship and a love for God's word and a deep prayer life for one another in this step. If you have so many programs going on that all kind of tackle things from a different perspective, it's possible for a person to engage in some or all of these things and not actually become mature.
Mm-hmm.
So the point of a primary ministry is to optimize this thing and say, we're going to try to create one environment that if we could get everybody in our church to engage in this environment, it positions them best to cultivate this kind of thing. A love for God's word, deep spiritual friendship, a healthy prayer life, and so on. And so it's sort of that relentless commitment to saying no to other things so that we can say, let's put all of these things together so people will engage in this one thing, which is best positioned them to grow in maturity. So you can do this by combining a bunch of things into one bucket. You could say, all right, we have Sunday school classes, we have small groups, we have these Bible studies, but they're all kind of the same thing. So rather than trying to divert a bunch of attention, let's create some shared DNA and some shared language to maximize clarity while maintaining the most amount of time slots available and options for people to engage.
Yeah.
Let's refine this one program a little bit so that it's optimized for this. But we are committed to the process and the outcome, not the program. So if the program becomes ineffective, we can ditch the program and come up with something else. But because the program is merely a means to accomplish the maturity, it isn't the end itself.
Yeah. I think too many people underestimate the power of clarity, because all of these things, because I mean, I think people could have listened to a lot of what you just said, Scott, and go, yeah, we agree. And that's why we've got 18 groups and we got 19 classes to choose from. And, that's why we've got so much stuff, because we want to have that same thing. And I think you underestimate the negative impact that overwhelm has on people when you cannot speak clearly about outcomes and benefits to people's lives, with a desire to mature in the faith, and instead just being overwhelmed by the stuff. Like, oh my gosh, there's just too much. And if it feels like I'm going to have to be at church every night of the week to try to piece this together, then basically, the unspoken answer to your invitation is going to be no. I'm just not going to do.
I'll go a step further.
Anything.
I think that most churches overestimate the quality of a lot of their programs.
That's true
because they
too.
have so many, there's no reasonable way for a church to do good quality control on the number of programs they have going on. Whereas if you, condense things into a clearer format, where you have a clearly defined primary ministry, which you can hold to a high standard and ensure a high level of quality control. And two, build your leadership pipeline around that primary ministry so that you ensure levels of accountability all the way down and up. Then you can really make sure that the thing that it's supposed to accomplish, the maturity it's supposed to develop, it's actually developing. I'm 100% convinced, and I know this because we've worked with hundreds of churches at this point, and we've taken them through our discipleship pathway workshops. And without fail, there's all kinds of programs that churches are doing that when you start measuring their discipleship output, not their attendance, but the actual maturity that they are producing, it's quite low. And it's a little bit of a wake-up call for a lot of churches to go, oh man, we are spending a lot of resources and time and attention on something that might be well attended, but isn't producing much spiritual fruit.
Yeah. And so often, the churches that have just got a ton going on, or even if they have, even in groups, they're all in on groups, no matter what format they might take. Often they don't have a format. And so they just have this huge collection. And if you ask them to describe like, okay, well, what do groups look like at your church? Well, it depends on the group. And then they start describing, well, some do this and some do that, and some are more like that. And some are this, this particular niche or others. And you have to take a step back and just think for a minute. If a new person comes to my church and they want to get engaged, how am I going to communicate that to them? Like, oh, do they need to fill out a questionnaire to figure out which of our groups might you be a good fit for? Or would you as a leader like to be able to have something in place in which you can confidently know no matter what group they go to, they're going to get the same experience, barring personality differences. But generally speaking, they're going to get the same experience with the same discipleship outcomes, no matter where they go. I tell you what, I would sleep much better at night as a leader or pastor, knowing I know this person is going to do great here, instead of like, oh boy, if they end up over there in Jim's group, I just don't know if that's going to be a good fit, or, this one over there. I think this is how we should want to serve people, and especially new people getting engaged.
Yeah. And this isn't exactly the same thing, but, I feel this way, say, about like our strategic envisioning process and our guides. While certainly maybe one of our guides might be a better fit based on geography or, theological background and experiences, or personality fit. Certainly those things play some role. But I feel confident that any church can engage with any of our guides and have a great experience because I trust our process.
Yeah.
Our process is tried and true. The workshops are reliable. We've done them so many times now, with different kinds of churches, that I know that they're going to have a good experience. And and I've taken out to the degree that I can, I've removed the variable of, well, how good is this person? Again, it's why we train our guides. By the way, you can go to malphursgroup.com/certification if you have interest in learning that process. I don't want to say that your guide doesn't make the experience, because definitely it does. I hope you know what I'm saying. I trust, we vet our guides and we train our guides, but also I trust the process, and I know the process is effective. And what you're trying to remove in the group's context is the singular variable of who the teacher is. Obviously, some of your teachers are going to be, or group leaders are going to be better than others, or more experienced than others, and that's going to make a difference. But if you have a really good system for groups, and they're designed to work and function in a particular way, you minimize that variable to a large degree, not entirely, so that you can ensure that no matter what group someone attends, they're going to grow as a disciple, and that's what you want.
Yeah, I mean,
that's maybe not one for one correlation, and I don't mean to denigrate and go, it doesn't matter, our guides are all the same, because that's not true. But I don't know. There's limits to the analogy, I suppose.
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I think the point comes across. I mean, when they're all trained to do the same thing the same way, then for the most part, the experience is going to be similar, no matter who it is. But yeah, I mean, so many churches, you've got a bunch of groups, and you can almost always predict. They're like, yeah, well, that one is, they're super heavy Bible study. It's like, this is like kind of like this theological intellectual group. These guys over here, it's mostly fellowship. So some of our groups are more fellowship oriented, and some are more Bible study oriented. Well, right there, Okay. You've already play this out in your mind. Okay. I pick the fellowship group. Great fellowship, great relationships. Couldn't find 1 Corinthians to save my life, but man, I've got some great friends at church. Or the opposite. I am just deep in the word. And if I got in a car accident, I don't know who I would call. So you have to almost kind of play out some extremes, because otherwise you're not saying it, but you're telling people you might want to be in about 3 groups to try to cover all of your bases, depending on what
all
choice
your bases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we even know what the bases are?
Well,
have we established
that's
bases?
maybe a good transition, though, to this third point, which is to go, okay, well, if we're not kind of just making a melting pot of everything we do, then that maybe doesn't make sense. You can merge and combine some things together into a primary ministry and refine them and try to optimize the DNA so that it's consistent and all those things we just talked about. But that's not going to work for every ministry. So then what do you do with those things? Those things that can't be combined, what do we do with them? And so there's a couple of things you can do with them. The first is that you can align them. And the second thing is that you can sunset them. So the things that we say align, these are things that we would call secondary ministries. These are ministries that you do that are connected to the primary ministry, but in a way that you don't expect every person necessarily to engage with them. So typically they function in one of 2 ways. One, it could be an on-ramp. So it's a short-term thing that we do in order to get someone plugged into the primary thing. It's an event, or it's a shorter run program, something like that helps someone get plugged into the thing that you want them to be engaged in for the long term. The second kind of secondary ministry is something that I call a step beyond, or you might think of it like a deep dive. It is a deeper level of commitment or engagement than you might expect the average person to have the time or energy to commit to. So maybe you like a mentorship program. Maybe you would love for everyone to be engaged in one-on-one discipleship or triads or mentorship or whatever. But that's not realistic for everybody. So you have that available, but as sort of a higher degree of engagement than you have as an expectation for everyone. So that would be secondary ministries. And then, of course, you can sunset things. Some things you don't have to. This is something that I think we talked about this maybe in last week's episode with Adam. I don't remember. I heard this from him, though, maybe even in the first episode we recorded with him a long time ago. This idea of mowing around the stump. Like, you have some things that are ministries that you're not necessarily going to continue to grow or going to continue to function, but you don't have to rip out the whole stump, and ruin the yard. You can just mow around the stump, and that's true. You can sort of sunset some things and go, all right, this ministry doesn't have to go away, but we don't have to be promoting it either. It can kind of just exist, and when it eventually goes away on its own, and that's okay too. So I just said a bunch of words. AJ, I don't know what you want to say about secondary ministries and sunsetting ministries.
Yeah, this is the hard part right here. This is where some serious decisions end up having to be made, and it takes some fortitude in leadership to work through these things to make sure that people see the value and understand why these decisions are being made. Obviously, the sunsetting of ministries is the most sensitive because people get emotionally attached to things. Sometimes, not always, but and then also not allowing secondary ministries to become just a new catch for your bloat. Like, all right, we don't really want to get rid of anything, so we're going to call it a secondary ministry. So again, all of this takes intentionality, and it has to be permeated with a desire for a better future. And we, Scott, I, our guides, we never come in with any authority or ability to twist your arm.
Or an agenda.
Yeah.
You got to get rid of this.
Other than for your church to be healthy and hopefully produce more and better disciples. Yeah, this is just the tough part of the process. This is where most of the work goes in the planning phase anyway, not in implementation. But making sense, having strategic secondary ministries and, of course, primary ministries, and then making some tough decisions in love and with information clarity. That's where that has to happen. Yeah, this is it's the necessary tough work.
this past weekend, we often use the analogy of cleaning out a garage.
Or
in our work.
closet. Yeah,
Or
cleaning
closet.
anything out.
And I actually cleaned out my garage this past weekend and did what you have to do, which is everything has to come out. You can't go little bit by little bit. You've got to get everything out because you can't organize everything. I mean, if you just go piece by piece, you can't really organize. So you got to get it all out of there. And I was going through this, and we have some wreaths that we have hung up in the garage because we cycle them through seasonally. You got the spring wreath and the
spring
Christmas
wreath, yeah, the fall,
the fall one, right?
the Christmas wreath.
We've got hooks for them in our on the wall in the back of our garage. We cycle them through. We had one of the wreaths that was hanging up in there, and it was really big. Is a wreath from our wedding. It was had like fake flowers.
It was decoration used at the wedding.
Decoration used at our wedding. Yes.
Boy, that sounds like that's going in the trash. If in AJ's house, that was be ready for the trash.
So it's obviously, well, wow, you
didn't get married last year.
You're a charmer, AJ. You know that?
You've been married a few years now.
Yeah, almost 20. So we both kind of looked. We've not. It's something that we have used as a decoration in the past.
Okay, it's not single dimensional. It's an appropriate decoration for another time besides a wedding.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I thought I'm picturing something with wedding bells and white streamers and stuff.
No. It's like it's fake flowers, obviously, because real flowers would have rotted. It's a wreath, it's a wreath like you might buy.
Okay, well, you could like a wedding wreath or something.
It's a wreath that we had, and we had several of them. They were on windows all throughout the church.
Okay.
And some family kept one, we kept one, so on. And we've used it as decor in the past.
Gotcha.
On occasion, but we haven't hung it out in years because we have other things that are newer that we like better. But we kind of had to look at each other like, what are we doing with this thing? She's like, do you care if we get rid of this wreath? And I was like, I don't care if we get rid of this wreath. And so
I love those conversations, especially when we agree. Those are awesome.
I think we were both maybe a little bit afraid of like, this is from our wedding. Like, what does this mean for us to part ways?
Yeah.
With this wreath, And we decided we're going to attempt to sell it because it's in good shape. Like someone might want it. You don't look at it and go from a wedding. I think you have something in your mind of like what it's.
I did it first. No. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. It's just a wreath.
Sellable, a 20-year-old sellable. Yeah. You think it's got value on the secondary market?
$1.
Okay.
$2 in a yard sale. Someone goes, oh, I love those colors.
Yeah.
It's kind of in a sort of summery, springy. It's pretty. It's not ugly. It's pretty. It's just not something that we want to hang out on our house anymore.
Yeah.
The point is, not the wreath. The point is that you can have things like this that are going on in your church that have been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
And people are afraid to say, is this something that we can get rid of now? Do we have to have this? And no one... We were never going to touch that wreath until we cleaned out the garage. I wasn't going to just go in there one day and take it down. Neither was she. But we were in this moment cleaning out the garage. That's what she wanted for Mother's Day was, can we clean the garage? So we're out there for hours cleaning the garage. And we had a built-in opportunity. And that's why strategic envisioning, having these built-in opportunities to ask questions you wouldn't normally are so important because not only are you able to get clarity around what matters most, you're also able to maybe let go of some things that it's past time to kind of just go, we don't need this.
Yeah. Boy, it feels good getting rid of stuff. Man, I love throwing stuff away. Me and Erica got to a new point in our relationship in the last year, so we both love to throw stuff away.
I'm happy with getting rid of stuff. So is she.
Stuff.
But generally, if it's something like from our wedding, neither one of us is going to make that decision unilaterally. You're going to have a conversation.
Yeah. The wedding album.
What do you say?
You can keep the wedding album. Pictures.
I have a t-shirt that kind of fits that I wore when we left, when we pulled out.
Okay. Yeah.
From the church.
Yeah.
This is just married.
Mr. Well, you got a just married.
It's a life is good shirt. This is just married.
Yeah.
I'm not getting rid of that. It doesn't take up much room in my drawer.
Yeah. We've everybody should have their space for their little personal keepsake things. I got t-shirts. I got t-shirts from past days.
Yeah, and so I guess I would say on the analogy, there's place for that kind of thing in church. We go, you know what? The juice isn't worth the squeeze. We don't need to get rid of this. It's okay.
Yeah.
But the reality with the wreath, I'm really stretching this analogy out, is we had more wreaths than we had hooks. We needed to clear out some wreaths.
You established a pathway. There wasn't room for everything.
There wasn't room for everything.
You had to evaluate and keep the most valuable things.
So I can keep the shirt because I had plenty of room in the drawer, but I can't keep the wreath because I don't have enough hooks. So the wreath's got to go. That's
good. How dusty was that wreath? Keep it in the garage. It's not in a bag.
Fine. I don't know what it is that you think how I live, but my
garages are dusty anyway. It was fine. Had a giant door open to the outside,
but it's not open most of the time. It's closed. I mean, I guess it's in the back. It was in the back of the garage. I don't know. It was, I guess, a little dusty. Not that bad.
Put the wreath put it in a bag. You can still hang it. Put a bag over it and hang it back up. Just keep it nice.
Oh, good grief! Some of our wreaths are in a bag. All right, the ones that have flocking. They have the fake snow.
Flocked, Christmas flocked wreath.
Those are in a bag.
Yeah.
Wow, people really care about hearing this. This is some riveting podcast content right here. Let's talk some more
talking about wreaths.
Oh my gosh.
That's good stuff.
All right, let's put a fine point on this. Okay, people won't engage. Here's a recap. People won't engage in what they don't understand. And a lot of you have a lot of stuff going on in your churches, and there's not a lot of structure to it, and some of it isn't very good. And so you need to take some intentional time to streamline your ministries, take the principles that we've applied here, go to healthychurchestoolkit.com, watch the strategic envisioning training, contact us and get a guide to help you if you feel like you need some extra help, so we can walk you through the workshops, the strategic envisioning workshops. And take the time to sort out your ministry garage, because there's stuff that needs to be cleaned out that hasn't. There's stuff that needs to be reorganized that's disorganized. And there are conversations that need to be had that you're avoiding. And so please go to healthychurchestoolkit.com. Get a trial for 7 days. Join us for the workshop that's coming up tomorrow as this is releasing. And jumpstart your discipleship growth in your church. It's possible.
Yeah, there you go. There's links below, either in your podcast app for this episode or on YouTube if you're watching and enjoying the video podcast. Links below for this week's article and for, jumping onto Healthy Churches Toolkit or Healthy Churches Global for our outside North America friends around the world. We're so glad you guys are with us. We'll be back again next week with something great. It's going to be great, Scott. Next week is really going to be good.
Yeah, okay. You'll have to tune in to find out what it is.
Okay.